bankrupt financial genius and like a billionaire janitor. It sounds like a joke, right? But it actually happens.
Yeah, it really does.
And that's exactly the wild premise we're exploring in today's deep dive. We're looking at this core thesis from Morgan Housel, which basically says doing well financially has almost nothing to do with how smart you are and, well, absolutely everything to do with how you behave.
Right, because we always approach money like it's this rigid math test. Like if you just memorize the optimal formula and punch the numbers into a spreadsheet, you get the one correct answer.
Yeah, exactly.
But the research shows that finance is actually about lived experience. Spreadsheets, I mean, they completely fail to account for the messy emotional reality of just being human.
Which really comes through in that concept of no one is crazy.
Yeah.
Because honestly, when you look at how some people spend their money, it just feels completely irrational.
Oh, absolutely. But think about someone who grew up during the Great Depression hoarding cash under a mattress. It makes total sense when you realize they watched banks literally fail and, life savings just vanish overnight.
So trauma shaped their behavior, not modern financial theory.
Exactly. Our financial diets are entirely built around our own narrow life experiences. We judge others because we just aren't seeing the world through their lens.
Like the example of someone with a very low income buying lottery tickets every week.
Yeah.
I do have to push back there a little bit, though.
Okay, sure.
A lottery ticket has a negative expected value. Mathematically, they are consistently losing money. So why wouldn't we judge that as objectively bad math?
Well, the math is bad, yeah, but the psychological mechanism at play makes sense. When people feel desperate or trapped in a cycle of poverty, their perception of probability warps.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
They aren't calculating expected value, they're purchasing a feeling. For a few dollars, they buy a temporary escape and just a sliver of hope for life-changing wealth that they don't see any other realistic path toward.
I mean, that's heavy. The spreadsheet says they're losing money, but emotionally, they're buying a coping mechanism.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's fascinating how a lack of resources warps our view of risk. But looking at the notes here, having abundant resources creates totally different blind spot. We completely misjudge success, too.
We really do. We obsessively study billionaires down to what time they wake up or what they eat for breakfast, assuming it's 100% skill.
Right, while ignoring the invisible, powerful roles of luck and risk. Take Bill Gates, for example.
Unquestionably brilliant and hardworking.
Yeah, nobody denies that.
But he also happened to attend one of the only high schools in the entire world in 1968 that had a computer.
Oh, wow, 1968.
Yeah. The odds of an American teenager having that access were roughly 1 in a million.
And then compare that to his close friend, Ken Evans. Evans was just as talented, just as driven, but he died in a mountaineering accident before he could ever build a company with Gates.
Right. Luck propelled Gates forward, and risk took Evans out of the story entirely.
Which kind of forces us to look at the paradox of holding on to money. Because the traits required to get wealthy are like massive risk-taking, wild optimism, and just putting yourself out there.
Yeah, but staying wealthy requires the complete opposite. It demands humility, caution, and this acceptance that what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow.
Warren Buffett is the perfect illustration of that endurance.
Yeah.
The sources highlight this staggering statistic. Buffett is worth around $100 billion, but roughly 97% of that wealth was accumulated after his 65th birthday.
That is wild to think about.
Right. The secret wasn't maximizing returns every single year. It was honestly just surviving.
Because the power of compounding time only works if you stay in the game. Earning consistently decent returns for decades beats trying to be the smartest person in the room and blowing up your portfolio.
But what happens when that drive to maximize and compound never shuts off? Like with Rajat Gupta.
Right. The research details his story as a huge cautionary tale. Here is the CEO of McKinsey, worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he throws it all away, literally going to federal prison for marginal gains from insider trading.
Which just seems insane from the outside. Like, why?
Completely. But Gupta's fatal flaw was being surrounded by billionaires and constantly measuring himself against them. There was always someone with more.
So he never defined what enough meant for him, and the goalpost just never stopped moving.
Exactly. Knowing when you have enough isn't a weakness, it's actually the ultimate wisdom. True wealth isn't a high score in a bank account. It's having the ultimate freedom to wake up and do what you want, when you want, with whom you want.
That is the highest dividend money pays. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want you to really think about how all this applies to your own life. We've got 4 big questions for you to ponder today.
First, have you ever made a financial decision that looked totally irrational from the outside but made perfect sense given your own history?
Right. Second, what is your actual definition of enough, and have you clearly defined it?
Third, how much of your financial success or struggle is due to luck versus skill?
And finally, what would change in your behavior if you focused on just staying in the game rather than trying to win every single round?